Hello dear friends. A few days ago I promised to invite for a talk the former advisor of Vladimir Putin, Andrey Illarionov. I have some very important questions for him, and so I keep my word. Andrey Illarionov on Sotnik-TV channel. Hello, Andrey Nikolaevich. Good day. 20 years under Putin's rule is a huge age, a very significant one. It's getting even longer than the rule of Brezhnev. Brezhnev ruled for 18 years, Putin's been at power for 20 years and outdid Brezhnev. Many summarize this period. Could you bring some intermediate results briefly? Where did Russia come to for the past 20 years? First of all, we sure need to bring intermediate results, as we still can't bring no final ones. Unfortunately, Putin remains with us. How long he will last, we don't know. He may last much longer than we wish. The medical care is great nowadays. That reminds me of Moscow, visited by the president of respected Zimbabwe Republic, Robert Mugabe, a couple of years ago. He was 94 years old at that time. So, unlike lots of our colleagues, I wouldn't rush talking about few more steps left until some brand new future of ours comes from around the corner. Unfortunately, that may take much longer than many of us wish. That was the first thing. Now moving to the intermediate results of those 20 years. We need to separate several spheres and fields here, and to discuss some of those. The political one is the most important. That is the field of civil freedoms and political rights. In that field, Putin, along with his closest colleagues, managed to obtain some unique results. As the sprouts of half-democratic and half-free society that were formed in the late 80s, thanks to President Gorbachev and the perestroika policy he began, followed by two congresses, the one of USSR people's representatives and the one of Russia's representatives, were completely destroyed. And by many political development features, modern Russia is lower not only than in the 90s or in the end of 80s. It's lower than during the period of Soviet Union Communist Party rule, led by Mikhail Gorbachev. The rights and political freedoms indicators are lower in modern Russia than in Soviet Union 89 or 90 or 87 or 88. It sounds like a drop of age. Many parameters make it really close to that time, the political ones. The only difference is that the society is slightly different and the economics is different. Back then it was completely centralized, completely totalitarian and completely planned. That is different now. Some islands and places of relative freedoms exist in modern economics, as well as in the citizens' personal behavior field. That is developed more than back then. But speaking of political rights and freedoms, we see the level of Andropov and Chernenko age. 20 or 30 years ago, it was impossible to imagine that we'll return to that time again. That reminds me of recent words of Mr. Yumashev. He is personally responsible for letting Putin to rule in 1999-2000. During an interview he said that Yeltsin was right, and we won't return to the political system of 1987. The current system differs from the political system back then. It's hard to argue on that one, as the current political system is worse than the one in 1987. Andrey Nikolaevich, you summarized the inner state of Russia. What can you say regarding the intermediate results in the economy of those 20 years of Putinism flourishing? Looking at those 20 years from economical point of view, we can split those into two unequal parts. The first one is around 9 years long. It lasted from 2000 to middle 2008. The second one has been on from August 2008 till August 2019, that makes 11 years. Russian gross domestic product almost doubled during the first 9 years. The per capita GDP almost doubled as well. Citizens' per capita income and spendings increased more than 2 times. From economical perspective, that period was the best ever for the entire history of the country. We know for sure that the period was the best for the last 135 years the statistics exist. That is from the end of the 19th century till the beginning of the 21st one. And since such economical growth was impossible earlier than the 19th or the 20th century, we may assume that the economic growth and the welfare increase we saw during those 9 or 10 years, from the end of 1998 till the mid-2008, are unique. So should we award Putin with a big plus, saying well done then? We need to say, and since I've been working in administration for some period of that time and saw that from the inside, to be fair, we need to admit that even Putin's significant personal income to that economical growth and support exists. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. We need to look into the results, even though those are the intermediate ones. We're talking the first period now, and such growth wouldn't be possible without that income. However, during the next 11 years, another record was set, and that was the stagnation record. During the 11 years from August 2008 till August 2019, the total cumulative GDP growth and the growth of per capita GDP was a bit more than 5%. That makes less than 1% per year. That is about 0.5% per year. Never in its history the country has seen such stagnation. Even the famous stagnation during Brezhnev rule, that was extensively discussed and written about, that was a weight hanging on the previous generation's neck. That stagnation looks like a rapid, stunning economic growth. As during the last 9 years of Brezhnev rule, that is the period usually associated with the stalemate, Soviet Union GDP increased by 17%. If we take the peaceful time and exclude the war periods of country's history, such as World Wars I or II, or the earliest wars, there is no peaceful period during which for 11 years the economics of Russia wouldn't grow. Speaking of private consumption, we know that during the last 5 years, starting 2014, that decreased. That decreased by around 13% comparing to what we had back in 2014. So today, the citizens obtain and consume less than 5 years ago. And once again, a peaceful period like that one, as our country is not totally peaceful nowadays. Russia is in war against Ukraine, there's war in Syria, and Russia is in war against the outside world. They call it hybrid, but I would name it total war. And what's more important, the Kremlin regime is in war against their own people, and those numbers reflect the war against their own people. The economical one, the political one, the ideological one, you name it. That's why, from the economical perspective, we need to acknowledge the reality and say that those are two different periods. The question is why those periods turn out so different. As for me, the cause is that, for some reason, in the beginning of Vladimir Putin rule, a completely totalitarian political approach and human rights contempt was maintained. However, during the first period of his rule, I mean the first 9 years, the aims of economic growth, resumption and maintaining existed, and he made some progress in that. Was the economy among his interests? It sure was, and I can confirm that. I'm a witness that he was really into economy. He was really looking for how to start the economy growth and how to maintain that on a high speed. That was really the fact. But then, in the period between 2003 and 2008, his mind changed dramatically. His vision of economy did, not the vision of politics, that remained the same, not the vision of human rights, that didn't change, but his economical vision did. Before that, his purpose had been economic growth and maintenance, and after 2008, that purpose was gone. That didn't simply decrease in its sizes, that didn't move to the background, that was simply gone. And what came instead? That is a very interesting question, but first let me point out that the purpose, that aim or those aims, completely disappeared from his sight. Now what took the place of the economic growth purpose? That place was taken by the concept, and now we can be pretty sure of that, of so-called historical Russia. The historical Russia is the term Putin has used for several times already. He did it in his written texts, and the last time he did was during his speech on May 9th, 2019, in front of the troops set for the parade on the Red Square. The historical Russia, according to Putin, means Russian Empire within the approximate borders of 1800. That was the turn of the 18th and the 19th centuries. If we keep trying to decode what Putin means under historical Russia term, we see that, first of all, he means the territory of Russia, Ukraine and Belarus, as well as Moldavia and probably Georgia, populated with mostly Orthodox people, the population that has received the Orthodox behavior code. From his perspective, that was probably inspired by the Orthodox monks he spoke to. That concept means that there are no separate peoples, like Ukrainians, Belarusians or Russians, but there's a single Russian people instead, which main feature is its commitment to the Orthodox religion, as well as the presence of a single, quote, Lord. That happened back in the days from his view, in the country he wants to restore at the historical Russia. And now he sees his main task in that so-called historical Russia restoration. In other words, for several times did he declare, and we saw and heard that time and again, that his main purpose as the President of Russian Federation was uniting one way or another by compelling and controlling the major part of Ukraine, excluding Galicia, where Greek Catholics prevail, as well as Belarus, probably excluding so-called Vyshnoria. You may recall the maneuvers that was held in Belarus against Vyshnoria 2 years ago. That is the northwestern part of Belarus with Catholic population prevailing. Yes, I recall something. As well as Transnistria. All those places are populated mostly with Orthodox coded people. So, that territory within the approximate borders of the 18th, 19th century Russian Empire is seen by Putin as the main goal of the operation he has apparently been performing since 2008. We saw him being the most active during the actions against Georgia in 2008, and during the aggression against Ukraine from 2014 up till now. In future, he will obviously do something similar to obtain control over the territory. Andrey Nikolaevich, thank you so much for that fascinating talk. It turned out to be way longer than I expected. That's because I simply couldn't stop. Thank you for answering almost all of the questions, even though many of those still remain for the future. Thank you and watch Sotnik-TV. Thank you, Alexander, and the viewers.